Not given, and it's also
Today, it's never been
putting the squeeze. They make money on
excessive materialism and militarism. We know full well that racism is still that hound of hell.
Welcome to Now in Color, the podcast that brings those who have been erased from history back to the forefront. I'm your host, Sandie Chang, and today we're recording a special episode in Brick by Brick Studios in Bushwick, Brooklyn. We moved from my living room to an actual studio, which is very exciting for me.
Yes.
And I'm joined once again by a special guest, Ezra.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to reintroduce yourself for those who did not listen to your episode in season 1?
Sure. I don't know if I can top your introduction in season 1, Mo Money, Mo Murders. But yeah, I mean, we've known each other for a little bit. I'm an actor and producer and writer in New York City. Been here for about 5 years from Massachusetts. I'm just happy that I know you and I have this chance to share another story.
Yeah, because for a long time I wasn't sure if we were friends. That was my question to you every day. Yeah. Are we friends?
I thought you were always being sarcastic, but I'm starting to feel like maybe you meant that.
No, I meant it. I was like, are we friends?
Yeah.
Are we going to be friends after this?
Did I give you vibes that we weren't?
I don't know. Everyone was just too cool, so I would always ask to make sure if people were my friends.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any no's?
I don't know. I only asked people I wanted to be friends with if they were my friends.
Awesome.
Yeah, because you never know with actors.
So everyone listening from class, if she didn't ask you, she doesn't care about you.
That's not true. I'm just easily intimidated by people.
Okay.
Yeah. So what have you been doing since the last time we recorded?
When was it? That was like August maybe?
Yeah, it was the summer. It was hot.
Yeah. What have I been up to? I did a play that I remember I didn't want to plug.
Yes, I remember editing that out.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. What an experience. Still don't want to plug it. Shot a short film with another young, talented actor named David Aaron Bell. Hopefully that's coming out soon.
Yeah, I mic'd you up in that film.
That's right. Actually, I spoke to him about a week ago.
Yeah.
There were sound issues.
Oh, no, because I left right after I mic'd you up. I was just like, I have to go, unfortunately. And there were sound issues.
You were in a rush. Huh?
Yep.
All right. Well, we might have to reshoot, so.
So I have to go back and mic you up again.
Yeah. Well, you're getting me paid twice, so I don't mind.
I'm going to be paid? I wasn't paid the last time.
Not me.
Oh, you're going to get paid. I didn't get paid. Why are you winking?
Because I want to sound cool, all right?
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I won't be paid. Anyway, yeah, so I've been doing that. And otherwise, just I actually I've been trying to take a little bit of a break from acting because I feel like for the last 2.5 years, I just haven't. Mm-hmm. And it's proved difficult because you'd go like 2 weeks without doing a play or a film or an audition or writing or talking to anyone, and you kind of start to get that anxious itch of like, oh shit, I'm falling behind, or I'm not doing something every single day to progress. So, but well, that's why I'm actually very happy when you asked me to come on again. I was like, beautiful. I have something to work on. I got something to research, something to do that's creative and fun. So thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I understand taking a break from acting. I took a 6-month break from acting, pretty much. And it was great. I loved it. It was fun.
Did you come back energized and motivated?
I think I just stopped caring as much. Not about acting, just like I just stopped caring so much. Well, does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's huge.
Yeah.
I started off not caring as much. And then I don't know why, but I started transitioning into caring. When you care, that's kind of when you act self-consciously and you care about how you look and what other people think and this and that. And, you get in your head and you fuck yourself up. So definitely not caring's a virtue, I think. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I took a break from Instagram and like social media and everything. But it is my job, so I had to be on there sometimes for my clients, not for me. But yeah, I just felt like it wasn't genuine. And I got into podcasting, obviously. Sat here with John over the summer as he composed my intro music. So shout out to him for doing that with me.
Yeah, I know. I know you were talking to me, and that was like that opening jingle. You like weren't able to find it, and you were like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't really know what I want, but I kind of do. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to John for kind of being able to harness your ideas and your thoughts and putting into something real.
Yeah, and people really, really like it. So I'm really happy for it. But yeah, I took a break from acting after school. I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to do this instead because it's mine and it feels real.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So should we get into it? You look so sad when I said that. Yeah.
I'm not sad. I'm excited.
You're excited?
Yeah.
Who are we bringing into this lovely room today?
The gentleman that I have the pleasure of speaking about today is a gentleman named Robert Smalls, the notorious Robert Smalls. Even though I guess he's not notorious because that would mean that people know about him.
Yeah, I don't know about him.
Yeah, so, okay. Robert Smalls. Oh, and also, I got to give a shout out to my mom because last episode, Mo Money, Mo Murders, she actually gave me the idea to do that podcast. And I didn't give her a shout out. I gave my source a shout out. And she was like, Ezra. So, Mom, I love you.
Thanks, Ezra's mom.
So today I'm covering Robert Smalls, and I guess what better way than just dive into it?
Let's do it.
And if I cough, I'm sorry. I'm nursing a cold.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's okay. You should just love your voice. That's what I learned at the podcast festival. Love your voice. Because everyone has a bit of a vocal fry, you know? The thing. I have a vocal fry.
Does fry mean that you don't like? What's fry mean?
It's like that. I can't do it right now. It's what women are often criticized for when they speak. It's like that sound like this. Do you know what I'm saying? But everyone has it.
Okay, I didn't know.
You're okay.
All right. I didn't know women were criticized for that.
Women are criticized for it all the time. Like, people often write into other podcasts and they're like, oh, I loved the content and everything, but the woman's voice was just so grating. But men are never told that their voices are grating, even if they have the same tone and the same frequency and things like that.
What kind of loser takes time out of their day to say, I like your podcast, but I don't like your voice?
Yeah, I don't know. People are weird.
Yeah.
So it's okay that you have a cold.
Yeah, and if anyone feels that way, keep it to yourself.
Yeah. You actually sound like very cool, like calm and collected. You know, it's a deeper voice. I like it.
Awesome. Well, I have the bacteria in my lungs to thank for that. So the gentleman that we're talking about today is called Robert Smalls, and he's a man that was born April 5th, 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina as a slave. And he was born to a woman named Lydia, who was also a slave. And she was born and raised in the fields. But in her teenage years, she started becoming very popular on the plantation amongst the masters and owners. So much so that they decided to move her inside, which obviously is better conditions. And they started to treat her very well. Not what you would consider a family member, but she got special treatment. And that special treatment ended up getting her pregnant. I don't know what's special, but...
I don't think special is the right word.
Right.
I mean, did she want that to happen?
We didn't get word if she wanted that, but it's well documented that slave masters would impregnate their slaves.
Yeah.
So the difference is that, yes, she was impregnated and she gave birth to young Robert. But the reason why I would say that she gets special treatment is because, unlike the other slaves on the plantation, she got to act as a mother to Robert. And she got to raise Robert all the way up until the age of 12 inside of the main home. And they never actually confirmed who Robert's father was. There's lots of speculation, but it's widely known that it was a white man because, quote unquote, Robert had very distinct mulatto features.
Oh, I've been hearing that word a lot lately.
Mulatto?
Yeah, the word mulatto.
Apparently,
I used to not know what it meant until this podcast, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's technic. Well, I shouldn't say technically. It's considered an offensive word.
Yeah, but people just use it so freely on my podcast that I'm like, I've never heard this before. It sounds mean.
Technically, I'm mulatto. It just means you're mixed between black and white.
Oh, okay.
Well,
where did that word come from? Do you know?
It might. I mean, I assume I guess it's a derogatory term. I don't know what I've never heard the proper term besides half black, half white.
Yeah.
So it's not really a
mixed race. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but mixed race could be any mixed race, right?
Oh, that's true. So it's specifically half black, half white.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So, yeah, Robert was brought up as a black slave, but in the white household, and he was treated better than the rest of the black slaves, and that's all he knew. That's all he ever experienced. That was his whole world, and he kind of had a skewed view of what slavery meant. He got to play with the other white children in the neighborhood and also the master's kids, which was obviously just something that was never heard of. And there was a curfew at the time for black people. And at 7 p.m., they all had to be back in their quarters. A bell would ring out and they'd have to all go back to their quarters. But obviously the white kids were allowed to stay out. And so when Robert was around the age of 12, he kind of, as normal 12-year-olds do, I guess they question rules, they question society. And he was like, why do I have to go back and the other kids don't? So he started disobeying that rule, and the authorities would come around around 7 p.m. They'd see that he was out and they'd take him down to the precinct, and his white master would have to come and bail him out. And this started happening a couple times, and his mother started getting really nervous because she knew the dangers of slavery. She knew that she was getting special treatment, and that, you know, that could end tomorrow or any second if it wanted to. And she wanted to protect her son. And so the way that she thought that she could do that would be to really show him what slavery was. And so they hold, in that time period in the South, they would hold these public whippings to kind of make a demonstration out of slaves that were misbehaving, quote unquote. So Robert's mother brought him one day to a public whipping when he was 12 years old, and it was a young girl being whipped, and Robert watched her. And after she finished getting all of her lashings, she fell to the floor. That they cut the ropes from her arms, and she fell to the floor. She rolled over, and Robert saw her face, and it was actually one of Robert's friends.
Oh, no.
And Robert was devastated. So his mother's plan worked in terms of showing him the atrocities of his conditions, but it didn't work in the way that she thought. Robert kind of had already kind of built this boldness up in him, and this, I mean, as anyone should, this love for themselves and this respect for themselves. And so instead of seeing this and saying, okay, I need to straighten up, he saw that and said, I need to speak up. And obviously that wasn't the time period to do that. So he started getting in more and more trouble. His mother, again, in a kind of a last-ditch effort, she came up with another plan of how to help out her child. And she used her popularity on the plantation, and she went to the slave owners, and she pleaded with them to send Robert to Charleston, South Carolina, because the best thing for you if you were a slave was to have a trade. If you had something that you could, like a craftsmanship that you could master, you were important and you were useful. So she sent Robert to Charleston, South Carolina, and he began to work on the docks. And he had learned all these different trades. He was a lamplighter, a foreman, sailmaker, a rigger, a sailor, and eventually he worked his way all the way up to be a wheelman. A wheelman is the same thing as a captain, but if like a captain of a ship. But because he was a slave, he was not allowed to
be called captain.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. He had the same exact role, but they were like, you don't get that title. and doing all these different things and working on the harbor so much, he really learned the harbor like the back of his hand. I mean, he knew it better than anyone else in Charleston. And eventually he got a job on a ship called the Planter, which was a cotton steamer. And this whole time when he was in Charleston, he was considered, I don't remember the technical term, but essentially he was rent a slave.
What? What do you mean?
Which means basically he still belonged to his masters, but his masters send him away to go do work somewhere else.
It's like a TaskRabbit, but you get paid as a TaskRabbitter. Never mind. That's a bad analogy.
I don't know what a TaskRabbit, but I'll...
What? You see it on the subways, like, let someone else hang your shelves, and like there's an app and you can invite people to your homes to hang your shelf for you.
Sounds like a carpenter.
No, it's like, it doesn't have to be a shelf. It can be anything. They can do anything for you. Not anything, but like within their skill set, you can hire people to come do things for you.
So the app is a TaskRabbit.
It's called TaskRabbit. I actually just used it the other day to hang a shelf.
Hence the shelf.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Got off track. So he's
a TaskRabbit.
A TaskRabbit, but without payment.
Right. Well, so his work earned $15 a month. His labor did. Mm-hmm. Those $15 went back to his masters. But his masters were, in that day and age, given the fact that they gave special treatment to his mother, they bailed him out of jail when he was being a bad slave. They were considered generous, and so they let him keep $1 out of that $15 a month. Mm-hmm. And Robert was a little hustler, so he would go into town and he'd buy like tobacco and fruits and vegetables. And then he'd go back out to the harbor and he'd flip them and he'd make a little cash for himself.
Smart.
Yeah, little hustler. And at the age of 17, he met a woman named Hannah, who was 30 years old at the time, already had 2 kids. But they ended up, he likes older women.
Yeah.
Same.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I do. I don't know why.
Why is that? Let's get into that.
Not 17 and 30, but yeah. When I was 24, I was dating a 34-year-old woman.
Oh, 10 years.
10 years. I reached out. I didn't reach out to her. A friend requested her on Instagram 2 weeks ago, and it's still pending. So you don't think she's going to accept that? No, I don't.
Maybe after she hears this, she'll be like, oh, Ezra's grown up.
Are you assuming that I wasn't grown up?
I don't know.
Is that your conclusion?
No. Well, I don't know. I wasn't
think
there.
about it. If she was dating a 24-year-old, she probably liked him young, She liked the immaturity in me.
We're going to get back to this. We'll circle back to this.
All right. So, so they had 3 children together, and they were allowed to live together because their masters gave them permission. Kind of back then, if your life was dictated by your master. If you could get married, it was because they said yes or no. If you could move in a different house, because they said yes or no. Different job, yes or no, and so on and so forth. So again, his masters were as decent as you could get as slave owners, and they allowed him to live with his wife and keep $1 a month. And so they were doing okay in Charleston, South Carolina. So fast forward about 6 years. It's 1861, and the first shots of the Civil War ring out in Charleston. Yeah, kind of a scary time. The Confederate Army jumps into full battle mode. So in South Carolina, all the wealthy white folks kind of flee the area because of this war that's coming onto them, leave their property behind, leave their jobs behind, and they get the hell out of there. So it's kind of a strange dynamic, because a lot of former slaves and just really, a couple like slave masters and white workers left behind.
And the Bunker Twins.
The Bunker Twins?
Yeah, I bring them up. I feel like I bring them up in almost every episode now. They are the original reason I started this podcast was because they were conjoined twins from Thailand which was known as Siam at the time. And so that's why it's called, I mean, you shouldn't call anyone this, but Siamese twins is because they were the original conjoined twins. So they came here as circus freaks, quote unquote, and they kind of took advantage of it, became really wealthy, married these sisters who were not conjoined, had 21 kids, owned slaves. American dream, which is bad. Don't own slaves.
So there were two conjoined.
Yeah.
Is it Taiwanese?
No, Thailand. So
two conjoined Thai twins who sounds like American dream. Wow.
Yes. So their sons fought for the Confederacy. Yes. Not good.
Yeah. Well, they lost. So
Asian assimilation. Not good.
It goes back a while.
It goes back. Sorry. Continue. Confederacy.
Well, Confederacy. Where it's 1861, Civil War, Charleston. So the Confederate Army starts to go into full battle mode, and they start enlisting all the local white people that are left as soldiers. All different stores, like metal shops that used to make tools and horseshoes, started making bullets and canteens and helmets. Convenience stores stopped selling normal products, started selling, food or producing food for the soldiers. And the planter that Robert was the captain or the wheelman of was told it could no longer be a cotton steamer. It now belonged to the Confederate Army as a transport boat, and Robert was made the wheelman of the now called CSS Planter, which I think means Confederate. I don't know what the SS stands for, but it's basically like a warship under like the state's control. Robert, kind of as we've seen in other times in his life, he was just a smart guy, and he worked his way up, and he became very popular on the Planter. And the Confederate soldiers trusted him and would leave him in charge a lot of the times because he was just very loyal, and they would let him lead the ship all up and down the harbor because he was smart and he knew it better than anyone else. And he really kind of gained the trust of these Confederate soldiers. And one day they were on the boat, and one of the Confederate soldiers took the actual captain, the actual captain's hat, which is kind of this big straw hat, and the captain would wear it bent kind of low down over his face in a very distinct style. And someone put it on Robert just as a joke, and all the soldiers started laughing, thinking it was really funny. And they were like, you look like the captain when you do that. This is hilarious. Little do they know, a light went off in Robert's head. That comment stuck with Robert. So he ended up hatching a plan. And so also during this time, the Union Army, the good guys from the North, they set up a blockade of ships about 7 miles off the coast of Charleston. And this blockade was kind of like the farthest, it was their strong point. It was like the farthest north that they would let Confederate ships, and everything below that, Confederate area still controlled. And so Robert tells 7 other slaves that work on the ship. There was 8 slaves that worked on the ship, and apparently one of them, he gets a lot of shit. Robert didn't share the joke with us. The joke. It's not a joke at all. Robert didn't share the plan with this soldier because he didn't trust him. But I was reading a lot, and a lot of people were giving this last soldier a lot of shit. Like, Robert couldn't even trust you because, how messed up are you as a person that when someone's giving you a plan for freedom, someone doesn't trust you to jump in. But I'm like, this guy was probably fucking scared for his life, and he'd seen what happened to slaves that wanted to get away.
Yeah. So do you relate to that?
I empathize with him. I've never been in that situation.
No, yeah. It was just, I meant like, because there's a lot of people who talk about like, oh, I don't want to do something because I'm afraid of like the consequences. Are you that type of person, or are you the type who's more like, fuck this?
I mean,
I'm going to start a revolution.
I mean, I'm closer. Well, I'll put it this way. In like today, like in the circumstances that I'm faced with in today's age, I'm much more the let's push the envelope.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking life or death, and I might get hung or worse, being hung is probably the easy way out. I don't know. I'm probably more in this other slave's boat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'm watching a show on TV, Escape at Denimora. It's awesome.
heard of this.
Ben Stiller's directing. It's about the escape in New York. And I'm like, if I was in prison and I had 10 years and someone wanted to escape in 5, I'd say no. I'd do my time and get the. Yeah, so there's 8 slaves on board of this CSS Planter, and Robert went up to 7 of them, and he he concocted this plan. And so the next several weeks, Robert would meet at his home with these other slaves, and they came up with a plan, and they made a decision that when they had the chance, they were going to steal the CSS Planter, ride it through the harbor, and sail up to that Union blockade where, wishful thinking, they're going to just get accepted, and that the North was going to see these former slaves, and that they were going to take them in. It's a pretty bold assumption, I think. And so they also, like we were just discussing, they knew the dangers of what would happen if they were caught. And again, like they were like, we would be lucky if we got hung. Most likely they would be publicly tortured. And, I don't want to go into the details of what they did to slaves. It's barbaric beyond belief.
Yeah.
And then they'd be made an example of. So they kind of made up this decision, like we're either going for it or we're gonna die. And that they built that into their plan. They part of the boat, they lined the bottom of the boat once they kind of had their plan ready to go. They lined the bottom of the boat with dynamite so that if they were caught, they would blow up the ship and they'd kill everyone on board, kill themselves. And they even had a backup plan that if for some reason the dynamite didn't go off, they'd all go onto the top of the ship, link arms, jump into the river, and pull each other down and drown themselves.
Wow.
So yeah, they were ready to go. They were just life or death. Let's see what happens. So May 12th, 1862. Is that the same year? No, that's 1 year into the Civil War. The CSS Planter, it's loaded up in the docks in Charleston, and it's a transport boat. So they have a bunch of guns, they have a bunch of ammo, they have a bunch of food, they have firewood, all these different things stockpiled on the ship because it's set out to sail the next day and bring reinforcements to the Confederate Army. And at the time, because obviously they had slaves and they had to kind of protect their assets, it was by law you had to have, I believe, 2 or 3 white men on a ship at all times while there were other black people on board. But again, Robert had befriended these people and he'd become very popular and very trustworthy. So the people on the CSS Planter, they just trusted Robert. And instead of staying there all night, they'd go into town and they'd drink, or they'd go back to their homes with their families. And so they'd often leave Robert in charge. And so on this night of May 12th, the 3 men that were in charge. And by the way, all these guys, we know what their names are. The 3 men on board.
Tell me.
Well, and his slave masters and his owners and all this, I actually kind of purposely decided not to say their names.
Yeah.
Just because, fuck them, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that.
Let's not mention their names.
Good stance.
Yeah. So there's 3 men on board of this ship. And like usual, they told Robert, we're going in town. We're getting drunk. Watch after the boys. So they leave and they head into town. And Robert says, this is it. This is the night. He tells the other slaves, get ready. We're doing it. He sends one of the little dock boys to run a mile up the river to go tell his wife where she was located on another dock. Tonight's the night. We're doing it. So Robert goes down into the little cabin. He opens up the captain's locker and he puts on the captain's trench coat.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
And he grabs that old straw hat and he puts it on his head and he pulls the brim down real low, just like the captain wore it. And he has his men hoist up the Confederate flag on that ship, and they slowly start to ease out of the dock. And they make their way up about a mile up the river to where his wife is waiting with about maybe 8 or 9 other slaves, the other family members of the slave workers on the ship with Robert, children, girlfriends, wives, and like two other slaves that kind of, were running that other boat where they are. And so they go and they pick up Robert's wife and these other slaves. Now, Robert had kept this secret pretty tight, and he hadn't told the other slaves the plan. So when he gets there and he picks them up, he kind of explains, this is what we're doing. And how Robert and the other slaves already decided, we're ready to risk our lives. It's kind of a big ask to tell these other people, hey, tonight's the night, get on the boat, we're getting out of here. Oh, by the way, if we don't make it, we're going to blow ourselves up with dynamite. And if that doesn't work, we're going to pull each other down and drown each other. So he started getting, there's like a little bit of debate, but this is at like probably 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert does not have time to deal with this. So he took matters into it's kind of the darkest part of his story. He takes matters into his own hands, and he grabs the women, he grabs the children, he forces them on his boat, brings them downstairs, locks them in the captain's cabin, and they put one slave down there with a gun on them, and they said, the first one of you that screams, we're gonna shoot you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I get tough love. Is that what you call tough love?
Sure. Tough love.
I think it's tough love. You're just saving them for their own,
It was for their own good.
It's for their own good. Jesus. Again, talk about like going back to like, would you be ready? If someone came up to me and said, we're getting out of here tonight, I'd be like, hold on, man, can I have a couple minutes to think about this? Can I say goodbye to my loved ones or something? But, time is of the essence.
Yes.
So he locks them in the bottom of the cabin, and again, he starts to sail off. And the thing about this harbor, so if you think about like air traffic control, I don't know if you ever heard air traffic control, like how much signals there are, like flighter 89 red 001, you're clear to take off on runway, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, like I've never heard this before. Where would I hear this? What channel is this on?
I don't know. You ever heard like, I don't know.
I know I have to turn off my phone because of that on the plane, right? Because it ruins the signals.
Yes.
Is that why?
I think that's actually a myth. Someone told me that's a myth.
Oh my God.
It has to be a myth. Like I'm on the planes plenty of times and I see people not turn off their freaking air or not put it on airplane mode, and thank God, knock on wood.
You think it's a myth?
Nothing's happened yet.
There's been a meme being shared now around social media where apparently if you were a child of immigrant families, all immigrant parents told their children that it was illegal to turn on the light in a car as you're driving at night. Like turn on the little dashboard light. What are those? The roof lights.
Yeah.
That it was illegal. And I remember my mom telling me that. But this was like shared widely in social media. So apparently it was like a huge urban myth among immigrant children, like children of immigrants.
Do you know why they were doing it? Or why
I have no idea.
The only reason I can think of is, they're probably trying to protect their kids. And they're like, if we're driving at night and you can't see inside that we're ethnic, then we're safer.
Interesting. But were you ever told that as a kid?
No, definitely not.
I have memories of me turning on that light as a kid and my mom yelling at me and being like, stop, it's illegal. And I'm like, what? Apparently it's like a shared phenomenon.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it's very specific to only immigrant families.
Wow.
Unless John, did you? Is he still there?
No, it would.
Do you remember this?
I feel like it would always be my dad being like, I can't fucking see.
Yeah, that sounds a little more accurate.
No, my mom, I swear, people thought it was illegal. And my mom was like, we're going to get arrested if you do this.
I think my dad was like, turn that shit off. I can't see.
Yeah, it's like at night and somebody turned on the light in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my dad being like, it's illegal to scream after 9 p.m.
Damn, but it's just so weird that it was so widely shared.
Yeah, well, listen, I just saw the movie Green Book.
Oh, yeah.
It's a terrific,
I need to watch that.
terrific movie. But it's I remember my grandparents drove from from Little Rock, Arkansas to Watts or Compton, California. And they had the little green book when they drove with my father. Yeah, because that's some real shit. You got to know where you can sleep. You got to know where you can get gas, where you can eat, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
it's wild.
There's definitely certain things that, families, non-white families share in circumstance like that.
Yeah. Another tangent, but that wasn't good. Sorry, I don't even remember what we were talking about before this.
So I was using a bad analogy apparently about air traffic control, but the reason I wanted to bring that up was because those techniques still existed back then. You needed to, when you're like maneuvering through a harbor as a ship, you need to have these certain codes that you're yelling out. You need to raise certain flags. You need to go down certain quote unquote runways or paths, all very, very specific things. And Robert, being the master sailor that he was, he knew all these different signals and these different codes that he had to say. And so he passed through, when he was going through the harbor, he passed through 5 large Confederate checkpoints. And on each one, he needed a specific code to yell out, and he needed a specific flag to fly. And not only did he do that, but like they can kind of see, he was about probably 100, 200 feet off the harbor. And so at night, with the silhouette of the moon, they would see him off from the shore. And he was calling out the right codes, and he was wearing that straw hat and that trench coat. And he passed as the white captain.
Oh my gosh, that's a luck.
Yeah. And so they start going through the harbor. And they finally make it past the 5 checkpoints. And once they pass the 5th checkpoint, they start to sail out. And again, that Union blockade is kind of about 7 miles offshore. So every ship that comes out of the harbor, at a certain point, you got to start to, I assume, turn right if you're heading towards the Atlantic to head south.
Wait, where are we coming from? We're coming from Charleston?
Yeah. So if you're coming from land heading towards the Atlantic, you turn right to keep going south.
I don't know.
I think.
I don't know. I can't.
I'm getting the approval over
Yeah.
And so, yeah, at a certain point, you got to turn right. And so Robert keeps the ship going into the last second, and then he makes a hard left. And the outposts, the checkpoints, they notice this, and they know something's wrong.
Oh my God.
And so they line up their they line up all of their cannons, and they start firing at the ship. But luckily, the ship is just out of reach of these cannons, and they miss. But now Robert is sailing in this CSS Planter. He has a big old Confederate flag flying from the top of his ship, and he's speeding towards these Union ships. The Union ships see this, or they hear the commotion of the cannons firing. They look out, and they see this Confederate ship barreling towards them. So they go into full fucking army mode also. They start turning their ships around. They start raising the cannons. They start, turning on like the machine guns and aiming them in place.
They had machine guns back then.
They did.
Wow.
Have you ever seen the movie Wild Wild West?
Yeah, I thought that was like mostly fake.
It is. It is. But there's a machine gun in that movie.
Oh.
It's like a very good depiction of what they used. It's kind of like this big, like hand cranked machine gun.
Yes. Because there's like a robot person in that movie, right?
Yeah, and he has like a head and like
spider legs. Yeah.
I think that movie got a little bit of harsh criticism. I think it's a pretty good movie.
You liked it?
I thought it was cool. And so, so they're barreling towards the Union Army. But Robert being Robert and the rest of the slaves, they had built this into their plan. And Robert's wife had brought on a white bed sheet. And so as soon as they're out of Confederate range, they pull down the Confederate flag and they hoist up the white flag. But you got to remember, it's 4:30 in the morning. It's still kind of dark out. And these Union ships can't see them. All they see is this ship barreling towards them. As soon as they get like their 4th cannon lined up, ready to shoot at this, the sun starts to come up over the horizon.
Oh my God.
It hits the ship. They see the white flag, and they decide not to shoot. And they're looking. They bring out like their telescopes. I don't know if it's a telescope. binoculars?
Binoculars.
Yeah, they weren't looking into outer space. They pulled out their binoculars and they're looking at the ship and they're looking for like, you know, these white guys on ship because you have to have a white person on ship. And they don't. All I see is like these two black guys and the rest of the slaves are hidden underneath. And so they decide not to shoot. And Robert sails right up to them and he just says, "Hello, sir. I'm here and I brought you guns, I brought you ammo, and I brought you a ship." And he, as his plan went, was welcomed with open arms.
That's amazing.
So they pull down the white flag, hoist up the American flag over the now USS Planter, because it's now under the United States flagship. And Robert and the rest of the escaped slaves are now free men.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy, daring escape that life or death. This guy made a decision, or all these people made a decision, and an incredible story.
That's a true American story right there.
It's a true American story, and it doesn't stop there.
Oh my God, there's more.
This man, that was probably his biggest war story, and it was incredible.
Yeah. They should make that into a movie. I can hear like Hans Zimmer, right? That's his name, Hans Zimmer, doing the composing the soundtrack of like that epic welling up of the music as the sun rises. Amazing.
Crazy.
Film producers listening to this will make you a lot of money.
Hell yeah.
I'm just giving you free ideas.
And yeah, so they all went up north, and they the rest of the slaves and Robert's wife settled in the north as free people. They didn't free men. That's kind of where the name free men comes from, even though they didn't switch their name. But that wasn't enough for Robert. And 4 months after getting his freedom, Robert goes to Washington, D.C. because his story got some pretty good press. And he was considered, I don't know if at that time he was considered a war hero, but he was considered a savior.
Yeah.
His story was well received. So some people knew who he was. He had some notoriety. And so 1 month later, he goes to Washington, D.C., and he gets the opportunity to speak with the major generals and President Lincoln. And he convinced President Lincoln, because up until this point, black soldiers or freed black slaves couldn't fight in the Union Army. And he convinced President Lincoln to allow black soldiers to enlist in the Union Army. By the end of the Civil War, 179,000 black soldiers fought in that war. That was 10% of the Union Army, which is...
That's crazy.
A lot of people will kind of say that was a gigantic advantage for them just to get 179,000 soldiers.
And 58 Chinese soldiers. I did an episode about this.
You say 58?
Yeah.
That's very specific.
Out of 200 Chinese people living in America at the time.
Talk about being the minority.
Yes, exactly. 5 were in the Confederate.
We don't like them.
Very specific. We don't like them.
And so, boom, he convinced Lincoln, let these soldiers in. 1 month after that, Robert Smalls is back on the now USS Planter. That same ship that he was once a little wheelman moving cotton, to then being a Confederate pilot or Confederate wheelman. Now he is a USS captain. He sails right back down to South Carolina, and he starts getting into battle. And his first assignment was to start moving these really dangerous water mines, which had been causing a lot of trouble for the Union Army. And the water mines, I don't know if you're familiar with a water mine, but essentially it's like they put an anchor in the ground, and then about maybe 10 feet under the water is where this mine just floats there. So you can't see it when you're on top of the water, but when a boat's going through, if they hit it, it's going to sink your ship.
That's insane.
So Robert, being one of the men in the Confederate Army who knows that harbor, he was one of the ones who set it up. He dropped and planted a lot of those. So he went through and he just knew exactly where most of them were. He took them out, saving countless Union soldier lives. And he stayed in battle as the captain of the U.S. Planter all the way until 1865, fighting in 17 battles.
Damn.
Yeah.
No injuries.
No, I don't know. I didn't know if he got injured. There's like, this guy's story has so many details that unfortunately, like I'm skipping over a couple like of his war stories of when like they went into battle. So officially, actually, he was a wheelman still on the USS Planter. They went into battle one day, and apparently like the white captain was so afraid in battle that he went down at the bottom of the ship and he hid. And Robert took over the ship, led them successfully through that battle. The story kind of got back out. That captain he might have been jailed as like a traitor or something.
Like a deserter.
Deserter, yeah. And that's actually when he became the official captain of the USS Planter. They had to give it to him.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was such a brave war hero. So there's just tons of stories like that. But 1865, Civil War ends, and Robert is a free man. And instead of staying up north where things are a little bit cooler, Robert decides to go back to Beaufort, South Carolina, where he was born. And he had earned some good money working as a Union soldier. Mm-hmm. And he goes back to the same house where he was once a slave, and he buys it.
That's amazing.
Yes. He now owns that home. That's his house. He also, around that time, he became the first black man to serve in the state assembly and Senate. And in 1874 was elected to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, where he lasted for 5 non-consecutive years. Non-consecutive, the way that I like to think about that is he was there and then someone voted him out because they didn't like him, and the other guy was doing such a shitty job. They're like, all right, we need Robert back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Robert brought his former slaves home, but Robert had a soft heart, and his former slaves suffered a lot after the Civil War, as a lot of Southern families did. Slavery, if you owned slaves, that was your main asset. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of money. So when you lost your slaves, they lost a lot of their work, a lot of their labor. Some of them stopped paying their property taxes because they were like trying to do a screw you to the Union and to Lincoln, but they lost their land. And so Robert wanted to help out his former masters because they had been good to him. And he bought them a little home on the edge of town.
Yeah. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
I'm making so many facial expressions thinking someone can see it, but yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah. That's good heart, I guess.
Good heart. I mean,
good for him.
He bought them that house. He also, their daughter, when he was a politician, he got their daughter a job in Washington. He got their son enlisted into the Union Army. When he was a politician, he tried to pass legislation that would reimburse his former owners. I don't know if it was reimburse every Southern family that lost money, but he tried to pass legislation that would reimburse his former owners so that they would get some money back. And eventually, even so, the man owner died. But Robert, apparently the woman of the house kind of, I don't know if she had dementia or she had something where she was mentally deteriorating, and she would come by her old house thinking it was still hers. And Robert, being Robert, he took her in and he gave her the master bedroom in the home, where she kind of, in a delirious way, still thought that it was her house. And he had the other workers on the still farm plantation catered to her all the way up until the day that she passed away.
Wow.
Very nice of him. Very nice of him.
That is very nice of him. Mm-hmm. It's so generous of him.
Yes.
I don't know how I feel about that right now, but that's nice. That's very forgiving.
Great.
Forgiveness is a huge thing.
Yeah. Well, so crazy part, and I think it also just shows about the time period that we can't really fathom. Mm-hmm. So when he took in his former master and kind of put her in the house and took care of her while she was deteriorating, she still... My computer's at 2%.
Oh no.
I might die soon. It's all right. I know the rest by heart.
Do you?
I hope so.
I think John is coming to the rescue.
Ooh. Speaking of, I'm looking at this flag that's posted here.
Yeah, we need to take a picture of that.
I don't know what year it is. It says 76. It's not 1976. It's not 1876.
1776?
Maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13 colonies. Where am I?
We can pause.
Pause.
We're pausing. This is where we're
I
pausing.
got a promise you could charger like an hour ago. It totally.
It's all right. I was watching it slowly tick down. Thank you.
Yeah. There we go.
Beautiful.
Your Instagram name is so long.
I know. I tried to plug it last time, and I don't think I got a single follower. You know that? It's all right. They didn't want to go through the trouble of plugging my name in. It's all right.
It's okay.
So yeah, Robert had he'd taken up this role as a politician. And again, like, I wish I wrote it down, but like the things that he did, he like formed railroad businesses. He founded newspapers. And another big thing that he did was education was incredibly important to him. He knew the power of education. So after the Civil War, he hired tutors. He learned how to read and write. He learned some other, different areas of education. And he founded a school in Beaufort for all the former slaves in the area. And in 1868, again, as a politician, he introduced a resolution to create the first free public schools for black or white students, didn't matter, in the history of the South.
Wow.
So like our public school system came into place because of Robert Smalls. And of course, he was appointed chairman so that he could oversee the implementation of this. And this is actually very interesting. So at this time period, black and white people went to school together. And
I was about to say that there was segregation.
Well, this was in the period, I think it's called the Reconstruction era. Mm-hmm. And so black people were allowed to vote, and they were allowed to have jobs. I think they were allowed to own property, and they were allowed to go to school with white students. And so he really kind of implemented this free public school, and it was good for a while. Also, the University of South Carolina had been shut down during the war because most of their students either fled if they had enough money, or they joined the Confederate. So Robert reopened the university, again, making it the first university in the South open to black and white students. And that lasted all the way into our good old buddy Jim Crow arrived in 1877.
Terrible.
Jim Crow was from 1877 at least, I don't know officially when Jim Crow stopped, but like the segregation of schools was from 1877 to 1954.
Which is insane to me. It's not that long ago.
Not only is it not that long ago, that's a long fucking time.
Yeah. And like the effects are still happening now, even in New York.
Yeah, that's it's actually a lot of things kind of anger me, but the fact that people like deny the effects, the ongoing effects of slavery and Jim Crow, and they just kind of say that's over, it's done, we're done with it, that bothers me.
Oh yeah, it bothers me too. Have you read the new Jim Crow?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it will make you angry for the rest of your life.
Sure, I haven't seen 13 Step yet for that reason.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. It's actually the same. It's not the same. I'm sure the documentaries. I actually didn't watch it because I was still so angry after reading New Jim Crow. But basically, it's the truth. It's not even an argument. It's the true thing of like mass incarceration is the new form of lynching, because so many black and brown men specifically are in prison for no real reason except that what they look like and who they are. Yeah,
I was watching, I think it was 2 days ago, some other kid, I don't remember what school it was, but he was in a fraternity and he raped some girl.
Yes.
And they let him walk away.
Yeah, $400 and like 3 years probation. Yeah. That was all he had.
Because what's the argument? It's prison would
ruin him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they're taking 12-year-old black boys and charging them as men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is deeply fucked up.
It's deeply fucked up. And another, so Robert Smalls served as a public official, I believe, all the way until I'm gonna get the date wrong. I don't even want to say it, but like 18, or like I think he served, maybe until 1876, like right before Jim Crow, and then in 1889, that's when Black people were again stripped of their right to vote, stripped of their right to own property, and blah blah blah.
So was he the only person who served? Was he the only Black man who served in Congress at the time? No other person followed in his footsteps, so to speak.
A couple did, and I don't remember his name, but he went to one of the schools that that Robert Smalls had built, and then he moved, I think, up north and became a pretty prominent Black politician, professor, politician. I know they're different, but there were other people that were benefiting from the equal opportunity that they had.
Yeah.
They ended up striking that down, and Black people for a long time lost their right to vote. Pretty sad. All the way up to 1954, Brown versus Board of Education.
Yeah.
Like I kind of said earlier, that's like the amount of things that Robert Smalls affected. Like even in Philadelphia, like he went home during the Civil War to Philadelphia. He was waiting for his ship to be repaired. He was on like a stagecoach car, and he was kicked off because he was Black. He wasn't supposed to be on there. Again, he had clout. Where he got out.
Clout.
And I think like 3 years later, stagecoaches in Philadelphia, they passed a law that you couldn't segregate on them. So he had his hand in so many different things that it's really incredible.
Yeah, he sounds like I can't believe he's not in our history books. The entire time when you were telling the story, you would get so excited, and it looked like you were so proud of him, like he was like your brother, basically. What do you think would have changed for you as an individual if you had known about him growing up?
I mean, I don't know if it would be like a direct effect. I think it would probably be an indirect effect. It would just be the same thing that you probably can ask a 7-year-old kid watching TV. Like, I don't remember what the series is called, but we have our first Black Spider-Man. I think it's played by like Donald Glover, maybe.
Oh, is it?
It's not like it's
like the animated one,
exactly.
Right?
It's not like an official. He didn't get his own show. There's like 8 Spider-Man, but one of them's Black. And so it's just like this. I guess I'd look at it that way. It's like a 7-year-old kid. I mean, we kind of talked about it last time. It's just about representation, and it's not so much. It's super conscious. It's just you develop ideas about who you are and society you live in by what you see. Yeah. And I think, so it probably would have, again, I can't say like the direct effect it would have had, but I'm sure, I don't know. I just a feeling of more belonging, a feeling of more you're supposed to be here. But I also, again, like I don't subscribe to that feeling that I'm living in a society that I don't belong in. Yeah.
Which I remember last time I said I admired you for, because, I mean, I feel a little better.
I was going to say, have you kind of adapted your thoughts?
I think I have, just because of this podcast, because I've been listening to so many stories, and it has inspired me to feel like I do belong, and listening to other people's struggles and how they have tried to fight the feeling of otherness. It's made me feel like, we're kind of, I mean, I've always felt it, but more so it's made me feel like we're in this together. And it feels good. And I feel better.
Good.
I feel like more validated since starting this podcast. So
good.
And I think it also helps not being around people who are still in the mindset that people of color do not belong here. Yeah, so I think that really helped in my 6-month break of acting.
I mean, did you run into that a lot? Like, did you run into people that didn't feel that minorities belonged here?
Growing up, I did, definitely. It was much more blatant growing up. It was much more like, you should go back to China. You're a chink. That. And I'd rather that happen. Like, I'd rather hear that.
I think you told me that.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, and I was like,
I'd rather,
I don't know.
because then I know, then like it's not this like weird dance that I often feel in like the Northeast, and it's specifically in the Northeast that I feel like this weird like there are microaggressions, there are like these transgressions and things that people say, especially when, I just felt like, especially in like people who think they are like very progressive and like liberal minded, I guess. I feel that I feel more stressed out in situations like that. I feel like I don't know when that transgression is going to occur. But like if I already know that you're racist and you're just going to say some shit, it's like almost kind of funny to me, because at this point, it's just crazy to say that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I put myself in like a situation if I'm at work. Would I rather have someone pretend to like me, smile in my face when I walk out the door, call me whatever derogatory word they want? Or would I want to walk in that door and have them say it to my face? I think I'd want to have them say it behind my back.
Yeah, I'd rather they just say it to my face.
I don't know.
Because it's much more dangerous. In my opinion, it's much more dangerous that they think that they are like, liberal. And I voted for Hillary and everything. I voted for Obama, things like that. But actually believe that you are inferior because of who you are,
Do you think those, to me, that sounds like two different people.
Really? It sounds like the same person.
Like, could someone really say, I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I voted for Obama.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like someone that thinks, if like someone that like goes out of their way to say, oh, I voted for Obama, I feel like they wouldn't think that you should, or me or any minority should go back to our country.
No, I don't think that they think that. Like, I think they still prescribe to, it's kind of like, the only analogy I can think of is like a feminist analogy where like there are women who believe that, they think that they are a feminist, or they say that they're a feminist. And then they say things like, oh, if you're like a stay-at-home mom or you're like just a wife, then like you're not really a feminist. Does that make sense? But like it's still the woman's choice to do what they want. Like just because someone chooses to be a stay-at-home mom doesn't make them any less of a feminist or any less equal. But there is like this mentality, or even a lot of things that I've heard recently from a lot of women is like, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm like not sexually open. What is that? Like if other people see me, they think I'm like a prude. Like because I'm not like sexually liberated, quote unquote. And like now this idea of feminism is like, oh, you can just sleep around and do whatever. And that's feminism. That means like you're sexually liberated. But there are women who don't prescribe to that, and they just want to not do that and be seen as they're seen as like a prude or like not really a feminist. But that's not true, because it's just a woman deciding what they want to do.
Yeah, feminist is
that's the only analogy I can think of. So in the same vein of what we were talking about, of sort of judging other people in that way.
Yeah. That's hard. I don't know. Feminists, I don't know. It's pretty black and white to me, but people complicate. Like feminist simply means that they believe that women are equal to men by definition, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, which is...
And we are human.
Yeah, which
we should get paid the same amount for the same work.
So it's crazy. It's, I guess the sad part is the people that are against feminism, clearly their marketing and their campaign and their spew, you call it a spew campaign against feminism, is not winning, but it's getting enough notoriety that people are, feminism doesn't, they're taking the word that means equal and they're making it, you get like extreme.
Yeah, because I've been thinking a lot about this because of the whole idea that, the truth that over 50% of white women voted for Trump.
Crazy.
And I'm just like, why would you ever do that? Because of the things that he said. And it makes me think that maybe their idea of feminism is that like all feminists hate men. And that's not the case. That's like not what we're talking about at all. And they think like, oh, well, I don't hate my husband or my son, so I don't want to be that.
Which makes no sense to me. Right. Well, it means whoever got in their ear and convinced them that's what it meant. You know, they're winning. There's been a lot of like that's like a huge topic of like women voting for Trump.
Yes.
Over the
White
first
women.
female, white men, over the first female potential president who, let's not kid ourselves at all, was extremely. I'll go out and say this: Hillary Clinton, besides people don't like her quote unquote Clinton shady dealings, which I'm sure there are. I think every politician does, but I'm sure the Clintons have done shady shit. Hillary Clinton is probably the most qualified person to be president in the history of candidates. Mm-hmm. She was first lady. She was Secretary of State, Defense?
State.
Secretary of State.
Right? State. Now I don't know.
Yeah, we get it.
Yes. State.
I mean, more qualified than most. I think more qualified than anyone else to ever. Well, let me not say that. I don't know my U.S. history that much. Point is,
you know a lot about Robert Smalls, which is great.
I know about Robert Smalls, and I know that Hillary Clinton was much more qualified than this fucking dickhead who ran a TV show.
Yeah,
which again,
definitely.
All these people, all these Fox News and these. Well, if you listen to Fox News, you're not a bad person. But they're like, oh, we don't want to hear celebrities' opinions and this and that. You fucking elected a celebrity.
Yeah.
You elected a TV personality. So I don't want to hear about. We don't want to hear Hollywood's opinions. But yeah, and there, you know, who was it? There's like Trevor Noah or Stephen Colbert or someone. They sent someone out on the streets to interview women who weren't voting for Trump, and I'm sure they picked the worst person they could find.
Who were not voting for Trump, or
who were voting for Trump?
Oh God. Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, let's give a little benefit of the doubt to some of these people, but they found the worst one, and like one of these women was like, I don't trust women. And they're like, why don't you think a woman can be president? She was like, I don't know, we're emotional, and I don't think that we can do it. And it was just again, I think they probably found the one woman who thought that way, but I think there's probably enough women that voted for him that don't think a woman can be president, and that
it's sad.
It's sad, and it kind of, I don't know. It's probably, again, I think at some point society figured out the same way they figured out with minorities, or, you know, black people, definitely, that if we can pit you against each other, mm-hmm. you're weak.
Yeah.
If you're fighting amongst each other, you're weak.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, they did that. They somehow figured out how to do that with those women that, not all of them again, but they figured out how to do that with some of the women who voted for Trump. And they're like, they have some animosity towards other women or some competition or whatever it is that they bred in them. So yeah, it's sad. It's sad that it works. That's what I don't like. It's sad that it fucking works.
It does work. Like you were saying, it's the same thing that happens with people of color being pit against each other, because if we're so busy fighting amongst each other, we allow white supremacy to thrive.
Exactly. We were talking earlier about Robert Smalls' mother, mm-hmm. who started off in the fields and then moved into the inside. And there's kind of like not an inside joke. It was kind of a little bit more of a popular joke. I feel like on Instagram maybe 2 years ago, but it was like light skin versus dark skin. Mm-hmm. It's a real thing.
It is.
There's this guy, I don't remember his name. I want to say his last name was Lynch, where we get the word lynch from. But essentially, when slavery first started in the United States, slaves were revolting left and right, except for at this plantation at this guy named something Lynch. And so he held this big slavers convention one year, and all the slave owners went out there, and they're like, how are you so successful? How is your plantation so profitable? And he broke it down, and he was like, I take the light-skinned slaves, I put them inside. I tell them that they're better than dark-skinned slaves. I put the dark-skinned slaves outside. I tell them that they're worse than light-skinned slaves. And you just pit them against each other, and they start thinking that one another are enemies rather than realizing who the real enemy is. And that's how you control people. Yeah,
it is how you control people. It is exactly what's happening now.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to bring this clip. I'm reading the book 1984 by George Orwell. George Orwell?
Yeah.
I was about to say Orson
I saw the play on Broadway. It was terrible.
I agree.
It was so bad.
It was loud. It was
very loud.
Flashing lights. Anyway.
It was one of those plays where during a dramatic scene, I would start laughing. Because I was so uncomfortable, which only happened one other time with Comfort Women, the musical.
Wow.
I laughed during that because it was so bad.
All right.
You should never make a musical about comfort women. That's insane
I guess.
and problematic.
Except, who's that comfort woman in Full Metal Jacket? Love Me Long Time.
Oh, God.
Very racist.
Is that where it came from?
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket.
Love me a long time.
Love Me Long Time. I mean, yeah, whatever she said. Very
It's insane.
racist. Very racist. Good movie.
So racist. I don't watch racist movies.
You're gonna have to narrow down your selection.
Yeah, I'm very picky about the movies I see. I don't see, if it's an all-white cast, I don't see it. Ever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm reading a script right now that takes place in Boston. Mm-hmm. A lot of white people in it. Irish
do you
Catholic. I don't know. So my brother's a writer. My brother's a filmmaker, and he made a film that takes place in Cape Cod in the 90s.
I'm laughing because you've asked me every single time we've met up have you seen it? And I always answer, what are you talking about? And I don't know what you're talking about. And then you explain it every time.
Should we try again? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Gosh. God damn it.
Where do I?
It's all right.
Okay, do you want to plug it?
Yeah, I don't know if he wants me to plug it.
Okay.
It's his first film. He wrote it when he was 24 and he filmed it when he was 28. So, of course, everyone looks back at their first project and blah, blah. I thought it was pretty good. It's called Hot Summer Nights.
Yes.
It stars Timothy Chalamet, Alex Rowe, Michaela. No, sorry, that's her character's name. Micah Monroe, that's her name.
Mm-hmm. But you're saying about this Boston.
Yeah, so right. Well, anyway, my brother wrote this film, and obviously my brother's half black, half white, and so he just wrote it, and it takes place in Cape Cod. There's not a lot of black people. Mm-hmm. I can't even think there's. I don't know if there's any black. Well, actually, I take that back. My father's in it was black, and I get a little. I don't have any lines, but I get a little cameo in it. Yeah, and he afterwards, kind of obviously, I think he's 31, 30. 32 now. But that, yeah, he's kind of looking back and he feels a little differently. But I guess the reason I bring that up is because how you kind of were like, I have this rule. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So I'm kind of on his side in terms of like, well, you know what? This might actually go back to our exposure when we're young and the stuff that we see. Like he didn't even think about, I need to put black people in my film. Mm-hmm. He was just like, I wrote a film that takes place in Cape Cod. These are what most people look like that live out in Cape Cod in the 90s. It's expensive homes and townies out there. There's not a lot of black people. So like I don't think he felt the need to go out of his way and writing black characters. Having said that, I definitely writing, working on the little script that I'm working on now, I definitely have taken notice that I kind of want to put black characters into my film.
Yeah, because why are white people the standard of a protagonist in a film?
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. I was actually talking to a friend the other day. Actually, you know her, Melanie Evans.
I don't know her.
She was in our class.
No, she wasn't.
Actually, all right. Maybe she was my first year class. Sorry.
Okay. I don't know her.
So she's casted on the show. I don't actually know if it's the current one she's on, but she was on School of Rock, the traveling play.
Yeah, I just met someone in School of Rock too, like a couple nights ago.
Wow, maybe they know each other.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's the understudy for like two characters, a black character and a white character. Mm-hmm. Because she can kind of, I guess, this day and age, you can kind of go both ways. And actually, to be completely honest, I forgot what I was going to say.
We were talking about, I was saying white people are not the standard for an experience in a film. And then you were talking about Melanie Evans, who I don't know.
Right.
But
yeah. So, right. So me and her were talking the other day, and I was talking about myself. And so in this day and age, we talk about, we want to put more minorities into films. And a lot of people would consider me racially ambiguous. Most people don't look at me and think that I'm half black, half white. Mm-hmm. I usually get like Middle Eastern, I get Dominican, I get Egyptian. And so it's interesting that people say racially ambiguous is great and they say minorities are great. But I just had, there's a lot of times where people will write for a black character, or they'll get the idea, or even if you read the way that a character speaks, you might start to, get the idea that they're black or Spanish. And then I step in front of them to audition or whatever. and I don't look like what they envisioned. If you envision a black character and then you see me, that's not what you envision. So it's just kind of, it's interesting that even now that we think about bringing minorities and black people in, there's still a certain, like if we want a black character, we want them to look black. If we have a Spanish character, we want them to look Spanish.
I think it depends on who's writing.
Can you, think of a film right now that it's not very clear. That, like, if there's a black lead, it's very clear they're black. Or if it's Spanish, it's very clear they're Spanish. Or if they're from, like one of a Middle Eastern country, it's very clear they're Middle Eastern. There's not a lot of characters that you're like, I don't know, I can't really picture where they're from, but it works.
What do you think? What about Jason Momoa? Right? That's his name? He's called Drogo.
Honestly...
He's Asian.
Honestly, I think most people look at him... I think they get lost in his sexiness. I don't think people look at him and see a different race. Interesting. That's my own opinion.
Yeah, I think the reason you may think that is because of the standard of like what is the standard of storytelling, and I feel like a lot of storytelling comes from like a Western European white perspective. Mm-hmm. So like when we see someone who doesn't look like in our minds now as like they don't look black or they're not Chinese or whatever, I think it's because we all have been brainwashed in this Western lens. Like I'm guilty of it too. Like there are moments where I see someone and I'm like, oh, in my mind they were someone else, And I think that's why things like this are important, is to decolonize our minds, because we've all been brainwashed.
Definitely. And I guess the reason I don't know if I sympathize with the right word, but I'm not like I'm not 100%. I get where it's coming from. Mm-hmm. I get like I was just the movie, what is it? If Beale Street Could Talk.
Haven't seen it.
It's an adaptation of James Baldwin's book. Mm-hmm. Like I saw that, and for some reason that film stuck out to me, and I was like, yeah, that character has to be distinctly black. Mm-hmm. He can't be racially ambiguous. He can't be brown. Like he has to be just a right off the bat identifiable black man.
Well, that goes back to what you were saying earlier about colorism and how that is a true thing of like being in light skin or dark skin, and you move through spaces in different experiences if you're light skinned or dark skinned. You know what I mean? So I think maybe that brings it into perspective of like, even if you are black, but you're in that spectrum of light and dark, you mm-hmm. also move through life in a different experience.
Definitely. I think, yeah, I guess the reason I say that is because I think stuff from like a cinematic.
Oh, you were thinking cinematic. I was thinking like experience-wise.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that they're very separate, because I think cinematic, you need to, when your screen comes up, you need your audience to kind of be able to identify who that character is right away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that.
That's why I challenged you to give me an example. I challenged you to give me an example.
Well, I think the reason why I don't have an example is because most of the films that are out there are from white Hollywood and white producers and white storytellers. Mm-hmm. Except for now, there's like a boom of like all these things with diversity and representation, which is wonderful. And I'm really glad for it. Mm-hmm. I'm really happy. But things like, even with Crazy Rich Asians, a movie I loved because I felt seen for the first time. Even that shouldn't have to represent all Asians, but it's still expected to represent all Asians. There are still dark-skinned Asians. There's still Southeast Asians. And it's not, I mean, that was largely just Chinese.
I wish I'd saw that film so
you can still see it. It's on iTunes. You can buy it.
I mean, I wish I'd seen it now so that I could talk to you about it, because I just saw that apparently in, I don't remember which Asian country, but
China
got very bad reviews.
Yes.
Do you know why?
It's because Chinese Americans and Chinese people we have two distinctly different experiences, and we're not the same. Does that make sense?
Of course.
And that's like really, that was like what was so frustrating about school, was I was trying to explain that. And I don't think anyone got it. Like, I just felt like it was like a monolith of like, if you're Chinese, then you just have this one experience. But if you're Chinese American, I could never relate to a Chinese person in China. Like, it would just be so completely different. Even within China, I'm sure there's like so many different regions and dialects. It's so completely different. Mm-hmm. And cultures are so completely different.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, like...
It's like a...
Is it even the same as saying that, like, trying to compare quote-unquote African-American to someone from Africa?
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's a completely different experience.
That's
and
night and day.
Like, not, it's not just like, yeah, it's too generalized, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if American audiences are ready for that yet, but
oh well, they should be, because I'm done catering to their standards.
Well, one podcast at a time.
One podcast at a time.
Changing America's view. Awesome.
So what brought you to Robert Smalls? How did you find him?
An old white man made me think of him.
Really?
Mm-hmm. George H.W. Bush passed away, 3 weeks ago now? Uh-huh. They were reading off his accomplishments. And I was just like, the people like this exist. He was a World War II veteran. He was ambassador to the UN. I think he was the head of CIA one time. He was, I believe, a congressman or a governor. He was a vice president. He was a president, and then his son went on to be president. Literally any one of those would be a lifetime accomplishment for someone. Mm-hmm. Any one of those you pick, if that's all they accomplished in their life, that's a lifetime achievement. And I was like, Jesus, people exist that have 10 lifetime achievements, you know. So I kind of knew a little bit about Robert Smalls, and I knew that he had, like, again, just like a checklist of achievements that no one else, the most normal people, will never, ever, ever accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I was like, all right, let me do this guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're wrapping up. Our time is almost up. Is there anything that you would want the audience to take away from this story, specifically Robert Smalls?
Man, I guess it goes out to the small population out there that might be listening that's in a circumstance.
Small.
Well, no, sorry. Not the...
How dare you? No, I'm kidding.
No. The small population inside of the listeners that do listen. Of people who are in a place, you know, they feel like they're in that crossroad where you're making hopefully no one's in a life or death situation that Robert is, but a situation where a life-changing situation where you can make life better for other people, or speak out in a time that you feel like you're going to get a lot of backlash, or you're going to, you know, maybe lose your job, maybe lose your girlfriend or your boyfriend, maybe lose the relationship you have with your parents, whatever it is, like a serious loss. And look at Robert Smalls and see that if you have, you know, justice in your heart and you are fighting for the right cause, that go for it, you know. Be a pioneer, and because, you know, I'm sure when Robert Smalls hopped on that boat when 1862 and was sailing to freedom, he wasn't thinking, I'm going to change the course of history. He was thinking, I'm going to get my ass out of slavery.
Yeah.
And I'm hopefully going to save these other 7 people I'm with. And here we are in 2018 talking about him and being inspired by him. So your little battle could inspire other people, and, you know, go forth. If it's the right thing to do, you have my support, and you have, you know, my love.
That's great. Is there anything that you want to plug, share? Anything going on in your life?
I got a short film coming up with we actually, it's pre-production, but with another talented director named Blake Bynum, director, producer, writer out of Washington, D.C. The film's going to be called Zeke Sanders' Story. He's got a couple films out right now that's been accepted to some festivals. So I'm excited to work with him again. And hopefully I can write into you or something so I can update you guys where to check it out.
Yeah, awesome. Anything else?
I want to plug Now in Color, the podcast. It's a beautiful thing. Season 2, episode 1. I appreciate you having me on as your first guest.
Thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely.
And hope to see you soon for another season or in the same season if you want.
Yes. And let's thank Brick by Brick. They got an awesome studio here. So we're really glad we're recording.
Yes. Thank you so much, Brick by Brick. It's so beautiful here. And if you ever need a recording space, come here. It's in Bushwick.
Hell yeah.
It's beautiful out here.
And check out the street art. We saw Cardi B painted as Mona Lisa. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Even though I live right by Bushwick, I don't really come here for some reason.
What's the street called with all the art? Trotman. Check out Trotman in Bushwick. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's it. Bye.